All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into one of the biggest, most mind-bending mysteries out there, consciousness itself.
I mean, for centuries, the answer seemed pretty straightforward, right? It's all in the brain. That 3-pound lump of goo between your ears is supposedly running the whole show, creating your entire reality. But what if that's not the whole story? What if it's not even close? Okay, let's get into it. Yeah, because that core idea that the brain builds consciousness from the ground up is really starting to hit some turbulence. We're seeing new scientific findings that just don't fit the old model. They're pointing to a picture that is way more complex and, honestly, a whole lot weirder than we ever thought possible.
So, what's causing this scientific earthquake? Well, it really kicks off with the fact that our best and brightest theories about consciousness just aren't cutting it anymore when put to the test.
So get this. There was this massive showdown, a huge study where scientists basically put the two leading theories of consciousness in a ring to fight it out. We're talking integrated information theory versus global workspace theory. And the result? It was a total shock. Neither one could land a knockout punch. Neither theory could actually explain how consciousness really happens. It left this giant gaping hole right in the middle of neuroscience. And when there's a vacuum like that in science, something new rushes in to fill it. That uncertainty has opened the door for a pretty wild challenger, an idea that comes from the strangest corners of physics, and it's called non-local consciousness.
Okay, so to even begin to wrap our heads around this, we have to take a quick detour into quantum physics, and we're talking about a concept called non-locality. Imagine you have two coins that are magically linked. No matter how far apart they are, one on Earth, one on Mars, if you flip one and it lands on heads, you instantly know the other one landed on tails. That's kind of like non-locality. Particles can be linked, connected instantly across any distance. It's so weird, Einstein himself famously called it spooky action at a distance.
And this really highlights two totally different ways of seeing the world. On the one hand, you've got what we think of as normal reality, right? Things are separate. To move a book, you have to touch it. But then you have this quantum view, where everything might be fundamentally interconnected, where over there can instantly affect over here. It's a total paradigm shift.
So what happens when you take that spooky interconnected idea and apply it to the mind? Well, you get the non-local consciousness hypothesis. And this is the truly mind-blowing part. It suggests that you, your consciousness, your awareness, aren't just a product of your brain. It proposes that consciousness isn't confined to your head, but might be a fundamental property of the universe itself, something we're all tapped into.
Okay, let's move on. Section 3, exploring non-physicalist models. And the key thing to get here is that this isn't just some fringe philosophical daydreaming. We're talking about serious scientists, even Nobel Prize winners, who are building actual models around this idea. Let's take a look at some of the frontrunners. And man, some of these theories are just wild. You've got Ork-Orr, which says consciousness is literally born from quantum computations happening in tiny structures inside our brain cells. Then you have something like analytic idealism, which completely flips the script and says the universe doesn't create mind. The universe is in mind. And there's dual aspect monism, this idea that mind and matter aren't separate things at all, but just two different faces of a single, deeper reality. Okay, so bold claims, right? They need some seriously strong evidence. And that's where we get to the really tough part, the hunt for proof. How on earth can you even begin to measure something like this? How do you test for mind-matter interaction?
Well, one of the most well-known attempts comes from a scientist named Dean Radin. He took a super sensitive piece of physics equipment, an interferometer, which is kind of like what's used in the famous double slit experiment, and he set out to answer a crazy question. Can your mind, just by focusing, actually affect the physical world at a quantum level?
The idea behind it is actually pretty simple, but the implications are huge. See, in the quantum world, the very act of measuring something changes it. So the question was, could a person's focused attention, just their mind, from another room through shielded walls, act like a detector? Could pure intention cause a quantum system to change? And the results were pretty staggering. This chart shows it perfectly. When people were focusing their intention on the experiment, there was a real, measurable, statistically significant change compared to when they weren't. We're not talking a tiny blip. Some of these experiments have reached what's called a 5 sigma result. To put that in perspective, that's the same level of certainty physicists use to confirm the discovery of the Higgs boson. It's a big deal.
But hold on.
Of course, a claim that big is going to get some serious pushback. And it did. The mainstream scientific community is, to put it mildly, not convinced. And honestly, they have some very solid reasons to be skeptical.
Let's look at the case of Pam Reynolds, for example. It's often held up as the gold standard for out-of-body experiences. The story is that she described her own brain surgery in detail while she was clinically dead. But when you dig into it, the story starts to fall apart. Turns out she probably heard the saw through vibrations in her skull, not from floating above her body. Her description had major mistakes in it, and oh yeah, she was on massive doses of drugs known to cause super realistic hallucinations. So,
And then there's a huge physics problem, especially for theories like OR. It's called decoherence. Think of a quantum state as a delicate soap bubble. The brain is like a warm, wet, windy room. According to most physicists, that soap bubble would pop instantly. There's just no way these fragile quantum effects could survive long enough in the messy environment of the brain to do anything useful.
so where do we stand? Well, we're looking at a field of science that's in total, fascinating chaos. It really feels like we're on the edge of a massive shift in thinking. Let's zoom out for the big finish.
What we have here is a genuine clash of titans, two completely different visions of what reality is. On one side, you had the old guard, where complex biological machines and consciousness is just something the brain makes, like a byproduct. On the other side, you have this radical new idea: consciousness isn't made by the brain at all, it's fundamental to the universe, and our brains are more like radios, tuning into a signal that's already there.
And this isn't just an abstract argument for scientists in a lab. This goes right to the core of what it means to be human, our purpose, our place in the universe. And that's something the great physicist Roger Penrose puts so well.
So we're left with this enormous question. If any of this non-local stuff is true, what does that make us? If consciousness is fundamental, a core feature of the universe, then we're not just random accidents on a lonely planet. We're an expression of the cosmos itself. It changes everything. And what you should really take away from all this is that the question of what are we is far, far from being answered. In fact, it feels like we're just learning how to ask the question.